Hello everybody, I'm InTheLittleWood, also known as Martin, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we have had a huge information dump about Zone 3 inside of Hytale's World of Orbis. So the footage you're seeing on the screen right now is the same VT that they showed recently at EGX Res over in London. Basically, Hytale were there presenting the company's history and a little bit of a sneak peek into the progress that they're currently undergoing in a special presentation. There was a Q&A at the end, and if you missed that video, be sure to click the link in the description, or if you look in the top corner right now, you can click through and go and watch it. So this week's blog post starts off with that video, and then also a reiteration of the fact that zones and biomes are completely different things. Zones are entire climates, whether they be dry and sunny, bitter and icy, or neutral and loads of plant life inside of them. Biomes, however, are variations of the landscape within each of these zones. So you only have 6 different zones currently, but there are going to be plenty of biomes within each of them. So we've all learned over the last couple of months that Zone 3 currently is named Borea, but the Hytale team have addressed this and said that not all names are currently final in regards to each of these zones, which is why they themselves are still referring to them by zone numbers. So the Emerald Grove might not be called that by launch, the Howling Sands could be something completely different, and Borea just might not exist. I personally quite like all of the names so far. I wasn't entirely sold on Borea until just about a week ago. Somebody actually pointed out that the name sounds a lot like the Northern Lights, which we've seen in this region. And here we go, time to butcher it. I think it's normally pronounced Aurora Borealis, which is where the word Borea comes from, the second half of that little phrase. Alright, so we've got a pretty basic one to start off. Screenshot number 1 this week is a demonstration of a special biome within Zone 3, which at the moment is sort of being referred to as a forest and valley. You can see a nice river running through the middle, there's that slight fog going on, and you can see some ever so slightly tall mountains cradling in the background, and it's said that beneath the surface they have got some very deep caves. And when they say deep, I don't think they're exaggerating. Think back to our video that we did where we addressed the jungle biome within Zone 4 and just how tall that one layer of the world was. You literally had stalactites hanging from the ceiling, and it must have been a good 30 or 40 blocks down from top to the bottom in that area. Now, even though there's not too much special going on in this screenshot, the text that follows it is very interesting. Finally, we have had confirmation that each of the zones are representative of one of the different elements of Gaia, whether that be wind, fire, earth, water, lightning, and even void. This is something that I've pointed out in my previous videos, and it's nice to have that validation. And of course, if you haven't guessed already, Zone 3 is locked down to water. So there are going to be snowy capped peaks and icy glaciers, and even a few different kinds of creatures in the area. We move on to screenshot number 2, where we get to see a little peek at some more wildlife inside of the game, and we've got another brand new animal to add to the list, a woodpecker. You can probably assume that with the behavior system that we saw last week, that there's very likely going to be a vigorous head bashing against a tree happening with this creature. And already you can assume that this area that we're looking at right now is a completely different biome to the one that we saw just a moment ago. You can see that snow has completely engulfed this area. It's on the top layer of pretty much anything that's in sight, and even the leaves don't seem to have any green left in them. They've sort of been frozen to the core. This screenshot as well demonstrates one thing that I've still been a little bit undecided about whether I like or not, and that is the depth of field focus. I'm really hoping that this is an option that we can toggle on or off inside a Hytale. Even in previous footage, like last week's blog post about behaviors and seeing how the chalk came into focus but looked really blurry from a distance, I think in some situations it'll look great, other times not so much. I hope it's a toggle. The Hytale team then go ahead and reel off a couple more animals that are in this zone from the Frost Wolves. So if you missed my previous video, basically we'd only seen them in concept art previously, but in the video footage from the start of this video, we finally saw them kind of moving but going to sleep. Then there's polar bears. They've actually been around since the announcement trailer. You might remember the one that was on the ice and the other one that went for a little doggy paddle. And then we get a really nice front-on image of the ram. This is one of the only confirmed rideable animals inside a Hytale currently. That did make me wonder though, in the announcement trailer, did they actually have any kind of saddle on the creature? I went back and had a look, and it turns out no. From the angle that we're given in the riding, there's no visible difference in their colorings, there's no kind of collar. How do we know which one in a pen is ours and which one hasn't been tamed yet? Unless maybe they're just going to have some kind of mastery system where when you actually level up that particular skill, or maybe just your level as a whole as a character, maybe that will then grant you the access to be able to ride on any ram that you walk up to. Unless it will just be that kind of persistent pot luck situation where you hop on the back of it similarly to the old horse mechanics, and it'll kick you off a couple times, and on the 4th go around you get a couple love hearts and here's your bezzy mate. Now in Hytale we're going to have a lot of caving systems, and we've already been told told that a lot of these will have points of interest that are actually built on the surface that will actually be able to introduce you into them, and it's a natural progression beneath the earth. But I am really curious to see how many of these kinds of entrances are going to be inside of the game on launch. Will it be a lot? Will it be too little? Who knows? But inside of this cave, we've got a couple bits of information. Firstly, compacted ice looks really cool up close, and hopefully we're going to be able to actually craft that for ourselves. I don't know what the recipe would be, but I'm hoping it's going to be there. Secondly, speaking of the compacted ice, it seems as though that is the dominant block when it's sat next to stone in terms of those overlapping textures to kind of add that blend to the world. Just sort of making a mental note of that kind of hierarchy now will be good for future builds that you're thinking of making. And then the enchanting glow welcoming you into the depths is the bioluminescent mushrooms. They're going to save you a little bit on the torches front, unless you want to collect them all together to use them for something like food? That I'm not so convinced on, but they do give me more of a mana pot vibe. You like the Fortnite shields? I reckon we're going to be using them to make recipes. We just mentioned a moment ago about prefabricated materials or points of interest, and right here we can see a mineshaft entrance, which is apparently a little bit larger than the average ones you'd find in Borea. And there are loads of really cool details inside of here. Like, firstly, we've got that strange bluish brick which seems to be cropping up all over Zone 3 and making up the buildings. In an older blog post, the Hytale team did discuss about how certain objects or certain materials would be tinted and toned differently depending on which zone they reside in. Anyway, going back to all the little details, hanging up in the middle of the scaffolding are some rags, or at least they look like kind of tanned leather rags. What material would you say they are? We have got some gigantic chains holding certain beams into place, and of course there seem to be some ropes that are reaching deep into the earth, which I guess will be some kind of lift. Can you imagine how cool it would be if Hytale had fully functioning lifts? Imagine the anticipation and the tension you could build for your players as you slowly plunge them deeper and deeper towards the core of the world, only to be revealed by a new cavern with dimly lit lights and probably a boss waiting at the end of it. Ugh. It does look as though these ropes actually move over towards that central building, so I wonder if there'll be some kind of simple push-pull mechanic that the ropes will have. All of this sort of stuff is still up in the air because at the moment we've not really had any major confirmation as to what sort of system Hytale's going to have in terms of electronics, whether we're going to have like a redstone style system, whether it's going to be more like from the announcement trailer in the movie section where you literally have a computer and you can put out separate nodes. We don't know what it's going to be. For adventure mode specifically I'm talking about. And then we move on to our first video clip for this week, and this is a really important first frame. So in the last video I spoke about how in one of the mine shafts inside of the little building at the back there seemed to be some strange glowing block, and I didn't know whether it was some kind of special workbench or not, and I had actually moved from the development team message me and say actually it's just an iron ore, and you get to see it right here. So all of this stuff about a special anvil or an enchanting block or whatever is just an ore. Never mind. As we make our way deeper and deeper down, I've got to say, I'm really liking the variation on the mushrooms. Of course, we've got the bioluminescent ones, but I'm really digging this Pop-Tart one as well. GG. This is what I imagine it would look like if they made a special Monsters Inc. Pop-Tart themed around Sully. We finally reached the bottom of the rope now, and it does seem as though it is attached to some kind of lower third caging or fencing that would probably stop a player from falling out. Lift confirmed? Probably not, because all of those minecart tracks don't really seem like they were brought down on the lift, but never mind. Anyway, more details that I like down here, starting off with the strange planks that are being used currently as a bridge. They're an odd T-shape, and they really don't look all that safe for walking on. And then if you have a little look at that doorway just there, I really like the sign that's hanging off the top of that. Although, having said that, I don't think that sign can actually be written to. I think it's there more for the aesthetic. But that does raise the question of, are we going to be able to display text inside a Hytale that players create? That's like a 99.99% yes from me. It's just a simple waiting game to see how it'll look. One final note as well as you watch this back, this might actually be probably the most extended vision that we've had so far of the flame animation, and I really like it. It has that kind of sporadic and sharp movement to it. And then the blog goes on to explain how the mineshaft prefabs can actually combine together in a really nice jigsaw style to actually create new and different combinations for these underground environments. Each layout or design is stored as something known as a node, and essentially those nodes can connect together when certain objects are represented. Whether that be a ladder or a staircase or a rope, they can all kind of intersect to look like they're purposely built. That same principle is also applied to dungeons, which I'm really excited about, because sometimes when block-based games have these special instances beneath the earth, they sometimes feel very square and very cut off all of a sudden. Whereas, I mean, this dungeon room right here, you can see in that back left area, there is a hole in the wall, but it seems to sort of like indulge into the cave. It feels like you could naturally come across this room if you just happen to be exploring. I'm definitely getting a little bit nostalgic of this room from the announcement trailer when we saw our characters going up against that big boss boy with a double-hander. It's looking really intimidating. Whilst looking at this image as well, I started to wonder how a torch is going to interact with things like snow, water, compacted ice inside the world of Orbis. I've gone back through a load of the footage that we've seen so far of Borea, and I've never seen an instance where a regular exposed torch has been next to any kind of snow. In fact, I've never really seen them even near any kind of snow. It's always been in drier spots. So at the moment we've no idea if torches are actually going to melt snow in the surrounding areas, or whether maybe that caged off torch actually stops that spread from happening. Maybe it contains all the heat and keeps it centralized. This could actually be a mechanical purpose for those iron cages, or it's just for aesthetics. Who knows? Just taking a peek at the caption beneath this image as well, and they actually refer to the mob on the right hand side as a skeletal defender as opposed to an archer back in the concept art. Skeletal defender could just be a blanket term for all skeletons that you find inside of a dungeon, but much like the zones, all names could still be up in the air for now. Alright, that's enough time spent underground. Let's get back to the surface and catch a beautiful sunrise. It just looks really, really nice, doesn't it? I'm really excited to see how we're going to change from those orange and pinks through to the blues and greys and even the browns in the sky of Orbis throughout the day. The lighting in Zone 3 so far seems to be the most pretty, which is awesome. And right here we get another little demonstration of the rendering and lighting effects that they have inside of the game, which just continues to build on that atmosphere and give you that real sense of cold, because you can really see the light just slicing through the fog as it breaks out the side of the trees and crests the top of that mountain. It's magic. With all of this grace though comes a little bit of disaster. It said in the blog post that Zone 3 is actually an area that has homed some of the darkest moments in Orbis's history. And this is where some of my theories start to check out in regards to the story of Orbis. So I said previously that a group known as the Outlanders will either be trying to set up residence in Zone 3, or they already have done, and they have these various different camps that have got the void magic portals and things like that. It turns out they are actually a breakaway faction from the human race. And for now, that is all they're saying. I'm sure in the future they'll give us more information about the Outlanders and their role in the story of Orbis, but I think it's pretty safe to assume that they're either being tainted by Varen's hand, and maybe some disciples from Nexus have come and warped their minds, or maybe they just want to see the world burn. Some people do. So the Outlanders are in Zone 3, they're setting up all these huge defenses, they've got these massive high walls and watchtowers, and they've got spikes everywhere. Who are they trying to keep at bay? They start teasing about this in the blog post, and I think we already know the answer, right? We reckon it's the Fawns. Those are the hoof-footed, attuned with nature good fellas that I think will be the good allies inside of Zone 3 that we have to assist. Just one more screenshot of one of these encampments, and you'll notice that there is a humongous fire. That looks really, really big. I think that might actually be 4 different campfires with a little bit of rock trimmings around it, just to make it look a bit more beefy. And notice once again how there's not a single torch near a single bit of snow, caged or otherwise. Come on, Hytale, give me something. Then we wrap things out this week with one final shot of the Yeti. You better hope that there's a way to go down into that tunnel, because I'm not going back up to the surface. No siree. And there we have it. That is everything from this week's blog post. That is so much information. But you know what's more exciting? Is that potentially in the next couple of weeks we might finally get some real insight to Zone 4. Because let's be honest, I feel like they've revealed as much as they're going to about the Emerald Grove and the Howling Sands. I feel as though we've already got a lot of information. So I reckon, to not spoil everything before the launch, they're not going to show us any more from those zones for a little while now. So Zone 4, the Devastated Lands, gimme. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let me know in the comment section below, what is your favourite part so far of Zone 3, currently known as Borea? Let me know those in the comment section below, or you can hop on over to our Discord, discord.gg/InTheLittleWood. We've got a dedicated Hytale chat inside of there where we geek out about the game constantly. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.